I don't just do something to be doing it, right? I want to do something that makes a difference in somebody's life. And then it comes from, no matter where you are, where you're from, loving people, right? If you love people and say you love people, then it'll show you want to do something with people. When you see hurting people, you don't want to see them hurting. Something in you says, what can I do about that? You don't just pass people by and don't see them.
Welcome to the Hope in Real Life podcast with Jason Gore. Our team is passionate and committed to bringing you more hope in the everyday, real areas of your life. If this conversation and content is valuable for you, please do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and even share. You never know how valuable it could be to share a little bit of hope with someone else. Let's get the conversation started.
All right, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another edition of the Hope in Real Life podcast. Wherever you're listening or watching, we thank you for tuning in. To my left, you guys know Jason Gore. Why? Because this is his podcast, okay? But to my right, we have a special guest. He is a friend of ours, a very good friend of ours. We love this man dearly. He's the pastor of Ship of Zion, located in Southeast Raleigh, but also he runs Ship Outreach and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, this dude, he got gyms, he got grocery stores. He's doing a lot of stuff for his community.
He is the Pastor Chris Jones.
The Pastor Chris Jones. We get the D in front of it. You get the D in front of it.
I don't know about all of that.
Hey, man, welcome, brother.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank you
man.
for having me. Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, so we just want to talk a little bit today about impacting your community. Obviously, you guys have heard a lot of Jason's story in terms of how he impacts his community that he lives in Garner. But Pastor Chris is doing a lot of work in Southeast Raleigh as well. And we just thought it would be great to just have a dialogue about what it looks like to impact your community in different contexts, different demographics, all of that stuff. And so I want to start here. This is a fill in the blank question. Pastor Chris is like, I ain't did fill in the blank since I've been in school. So I got fill in the blank for you, okay?
We'll do our best to fill it in.
Okay, here's the fill in the blank. Here we go. I want you to fill in the blank. We're going to start with you, Pastor Chris, then we'll come to you, Jason. My community was blank, so I decided to do blank, and blank has been the result. How would you fill that in?
Well, first of all, let me say this. I couldn't do anything without this guy. So I got to do that first of all, right?
Doing this.
Yeah. So I just thank you for your support and all the things that you've done to help us. And it's about doing this stuff together, right? But my community was actually desolate, right? I would like to use that term. It was missing a lot of things, and that's why we try to fill in gaps, right? And so we went into a zip code area that we targeted, 27601. We targeted that area, and we did asset mapping to see what assets were there that we could use. But then we also went in to find out what wasn't there that the people needed, right? And so we started filling those gaps. There was a food disparity, there was a clothes disparity, there was an education disparity. And so we started building programs around to meet the needs of those people. And we did that. We built those around them. Now you want to know the outcome. The neighborhood is beginning to be gentrified, which I have something about gentrification. I do gentrification with justice. And so it's beginning to be gentrified. But now the neighborhood, even before gentrification came, we helped to change some of those people, to bring them into the body of Christ, right? That they might have new lives. And I can say that we were somewhat successful because when we went there, our church only had about 50 members. Now on our active roster, we're over 600, right? And so that was the outcome.
That's good.
Right?
That's good. Jason, my community was blank, so I decided to do blank, and blank has been the result.
Yes, so I'm going to answer you.
Okay.
But I first want to address, Chris kind of gives an answer, and Chris is a guy, Chris is a man who just doesn't stop, okay?
He doesn't.
But the way that he's seen his impact is through building his organizations, through building Ship of Zion, through Ship Outreach. And because we want this podcast to be about, like, how do we bring hope in real life? Like, somebody's next step might not be to start an organization.
Right.
It might be, and if it is, go get it, right? Maybe you can get partnered up with other organizations and we can go further, faster together. But I'm not gonna talk about my leadership at the church here, and I'm just gonna make this on a personal basis, all right? So I'm just gonna talk about my individual life in Garner. So I would say, just as a person that anybody can look around and see, I saw that in my community, it was void of male leadership. And so So what I decided to do was to jump in and start coaching youth sports about a decade ago. Primarily the organization I chose was Pop Warner Football, and I said, okay, there's a need here. There's also an area of passion that I have, a little bit of experience, and so I see this need in my community, so I'm going to jump in and be a coach.
That's good.
And what I've seen as a result over the last 10 years legitimately is families growing closer together. I think we've seen our community strengthen. I've seen young men, because I know I can't do it by myself, and so what I try to pull in other men that can come alongside of me and coach. And what I've seen is young men have more positive male role models in their life that, I mean, just being honest, I mean, some of these guys don't have dads in their life.
That's right.
And so you get some positive men in their life that will pull them in the right direction. And now we're a decade into this thing, and you just know, man, lives' trajectories are changing. And so now some of these young men are in middle school, some of these young men are now in high school. And so I believe we're seeing generations change by the investment that we're making in the relationships that we started.
Your childhood, we talked about this a little bit in earlier episodes, I believe episode 1 and 2, but if we had, so for the new listeners who maybe just jumped in this episode, from your childhood, how influential were coaches for you? And how did that kind of lead to you doing some of this work now?
Yeah.
And Pastor Chris, I'm going to ask you the same question too.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I really believe that I am the man that I am today, for better or for worse, at large, because of the coaches that I had in my life. Now, I know my dad would say that he prayed that I would be surrounded by people that would invest in me in the right way. You know, but I mean, my parents were divorced, and while my stepdad did a phenomenal job providing for us and raising me, and my dad did the best he could where he could, as a young man, you still have questions, right? Like, okay, my parents aren't together, I don't have a consistent... But man, the coaches I had, and I'll just say them by name, you know, Jerry Winterton, Bill Devine, Jay DeJeet, Coach Boyette, I mean, Coach Lendenning. I mean, these are men that were models of consistency in my life for 4, 5, 6 years, even beyond high school, that said, hey, no, this is the value system that we live our lives by as men, not just on the field, not just on the mat. And it stuck with me.
Pastor Chris, building organizations, like, what from your childhood do you think led to you doing this kind of work?
Well, when we talk about the father, my father died when I was 6 years old. I saw my father in Brooklyn, New York, and watched him when he died. So my mom never brought another man in the house, so I never had a male role model. So it was later in life that men really started influencing in my life. Because where I came from, you know, even the role models in our neighborhood wasn't very good. But there was this one coach in my life that kind of, you know, believed in me. And his name was Melvin Jones, and he's since passed away. Melvin came to me one day. He saw me at the park playing. He said, "You will be my point guard," you know. And I said, "Man, I want to do that," because I was, can I be honest? I was doing hood stuff. I want to play ball at the park, and I want to do that. But he said, "You will be my point guard." And he pulled me on his team. He would pick me up because, like I said, I didn't have a father. Mom worked all the time. And he took me to every practice, made sure I was at every game. No matter what condition I was in, he made sure I was there, right? And so he spoke into my life, man, and it gave me some direction because, you know, not having that role model, that father figure in my life, you know, I never had nobody to look to, never had nobody to pat me on my back and say, hey, you're doing good, keep doing this, keep going and doing this. But Melvin Jones was my guy. And he brought that difference in my life, and that's why I do what I do now. You know, I want to help other people. I want to be a Melvin Jones in some other kid's life. That's good.
For the people, they're just hearing about Ship Outreach, Ship of Zion. Talk a little bit about all the stuff that's under that Ship umbrella.
Oh man, that's
you said that could be a whole podcast. You said that could be a whole podcast itself.
Right there.
Yeah. And I'm gonna try to do it quickly, right? And so, like I said, we fill gaps. So when we find gaps in people's lives, then we try to fill them. And so we were in that 27610 zip code area that we targeted, and I say, well, I believe we were successful there. But now we've moved to a bigger place, right, where we're trying to do a work in all of South Raleigh. And so we're in a center at 2635 South Saunders Street, where we have our Galley grocery store, where we help people that don't have food or may have food stamps, needed food stamps to stretch further. We have that there. If you don't have food stamps, we got vouchers. You can come in and shop for that. We have Treasures. It's a women's clothing store to bring dignity to women. And why we're doing women clothing stores? Because we have an organization that we call our Trafficking Initiative, which we're actually going to call our Hope Center when we get that center up and running.
That's a good name.
Yeah, and so we it's actually in our website now, and so we're helping rescue women or filling that gap until they understand they need to be rescued. Work with them and getting them to the proper organizations that they need to get the help that they need. We also have what we call Shipyard, right? I know you notice Jason Arms over there, and so we don't need to come down here and tell all of our stuff, right? And so we have
Jason can come down there and train some people.
No, he'll tell my waist and big arms, and they're still. And so we have Shipyard, and Shipyard actually, we got young kids that come on every other Wednesday night that we work with, but we also have some guys that come through that just need that time to come down and sit down and work out by themselves, or I'm able to speak into their lives. And some people ask me, why don't they just go to Planet Fit? Well, these guys I work out with, they can't go to Planet Fit, with the stuff that they come with, right? And so we had to build that place that people can just wind down. They can wind down. We also have our what we call Bread of Life, where we take care of families in the city. Right now we're taking care of more than 3,000 families in our city. I was told by my director there that now we're moving more than 40,000 loaves of bread a month in that place, right? We partner with all kind of organizations. One organization that's standing up to me right now is what we call the Bread of Life. They're also called the Bread of Life, and they're doing sandwiches downtown. Yeah. They do 3,000 sandwiches a week. And my guy told me, he said, guess what? We give them all the bread and meat to do that. I said, you gotta be kidding me, right? And so those kind of things that we're doing. Well, what am I leaving out? We also just put our first hydroponic garden in the bottom of our facility, and we're gonna build a lot more of those. So we're gonna actually have organic vegetables that we're pushing out in our community, man. And so our new thing we just put on is YM4C, Young Men for Christ. We just brought them aboard, and they're working in our community in the schools and the high schools, working with young people, and they work with the kids that are gang impacted and kids that are underprivileged, and he trying to reach those guys in there. His name is Troy Johnson, that's out there working and doing that work for us also. So there's just so many things that we're doing. Yes, sir.
That's good.
You know why it's so important? Just to pause for a minute and hear all that, and I'm so glad that Chris can share all that. Because in this world right now, you turn on the news, that's not the stuff you're hearing.
Right.
You're hearing about all the stuff that's going wrong. And there are men and women and students that are out in the world that are making a difference, and we just don't hear about it enough. And and you made that outrageous claim at the beginning. You said we can't do anything without that guy, which is ridiculous because you were doing this stuff long before you and I knew each other, before our relationship was up. Now we see the impact that you can make, and we do believe that we can impact more, and we can go further, faster, and that we're better together.
That's right.
And so that's why we're partnered together. But man, it's just good to know that there's people that are out there that are making that kind of difference. And so for a podcast like Hope in Real Life, as a listener, I hope someone can hear that and know, like, okay, someone is making a difference. People can make a difference.
Yeah. I can make a difference.
That's right. And I think I maybe said this in the first episode, but I don't know that anyone's really going to find hope in real life without a purpose in their real life.
Right.
That's good.
And this should be like a reminder to people that you can make a difference.
Jason, that's good.
You can make an impact.
That's good. Both of you doing work in different ways, different communities that have changed a bit, right? How has that impacted the work that you guys are doing?
I think for me, and again, I'm going to just take it back to me as an individual. I think because if you're looking to like say, okay, how do I make a difference? How do I live a life of purpose? Then you've got to do a few things. I mean, you got to take a step back and say, okay, what are the needs around me? To step in, like you said, the first thing that you did was you said, let's see what the community has, let's see what the community needs.
Right.
For me as an individual, where I live, learn, work, or play, what are the needs? Let's get my eyes off myself for a minute and let's look at the needs of other people. And then you got to take some inventory of yourself. Like, what breaks my heart?
That's
right?
good.
What's my holy discontent?
Yep.
What's the thing that like must be done? And now let's look for some overlap, and hopefully there is. But at the end of the day, if there's not any overlap, if you really want to make a difference, what needs to get done? Go find a way to help to get it done. And usually, if you're doing the right thing, there's going to be some other people that are going to come along with you. And so when you say, for me, what's changed, I usually see over the last, I have twins that are 14 years old, and then I have another guy a little guy who's 12. And so for me, what's changed is, like, I spend a good amount of time with my kids. I go where my kids go, or they go where I take them. But I need to be where they are. And so for me, it's just been different things. So whether it's their school, and I'm involved in school, okay, well then I'm going to go and try to find ways to serve in the school. Whether it's the sports that they're interested in, okay, that's what you're going to get. Okay, how can I go and add value in wherever I am? And I think a lot of times we make impact and making a difference in serving like this big difficult thing, when really it's just where are you? A friend of mine, Chris Marlowe, he wrote a book one time, and it was called Doing Good is Simple. And the idea was, wherever you are, let's do some good there.
Let's do some good there.
So
that's good. That's good.
So
Pastor Chris, what about you?
you
actually mentioned gentrification earlier in your community, and you said, I forgot what you said. You said
we do it with justice.
With justice. Talk about that.
So,
talk about that.
And so you don't get mad at gentrification, right? If it comes as an economic thing, people try to make it out of something else, and I don't want to get into that. I'm going to say it a little bit. They try to make it out of a racist thing. It's economics, right?
It is,
and it comes, and some people suffer because of lack of knowledge of what's coming down, what's coming to them. If we look at it that way,
or lack of ownership,
right? Lack of ownership. But most neighborhoods that you go in, that are being gentrified, the people that are there, lack of ownership, most of those are 70 to 80% renters anyway, right? And so how we do the justice, we did this. We went in and found people that lived there that didn't want to move out of their neighborhood, but their housing was kind of falling apart, right? We went in and helped those people to make their houses better, that they could stay in that neighborhood. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. There's some people that don't have ownership, and there's a reason why they don't have ownership, and some of them need to get out of the neighborhood. Let's be honest. And so we call that with justice. Those of them that need to stay, we're gonna help them stay. Those of them that need to get out, I'm gonna help you get out, right? Because I want the neighborhood better, right? And so it's about working in your area of influence, right? And so anybody can do that, right? Just like you said, anybody, it's easy. So you think about what's around you, what's around you that needs to be done. And not just brick and mortar or grass, what's around in a person's life, in people's lives that they're missing, that you at the state in your life, you probably can't meet every need, but how can I help? How can I help my neighbors? How can I impact my neighborhood? And you always want to be thinking like that if you want to be a good neighbor, if you want to make a difference, if you want to live by purpose, right? And so if you're doing that, then you find out, how can I help my people? And then you figure out what those gaps are, and you begin to fill those gaps the best you can.
Now here's what's interesting. I just noticed this from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You actually didn't grow up in Garner.
No.
Most people on the surface would think you grew up in Garner because you're so invested. Most people would think you Southeast Raleigh, right? And we have a lot of people in the Triangle. I'm one of them. Transplant from somewhere else, right? But you guys are deeply vested in the communities that you live in.
Yes, sir.
What made you get so deeply invested in the place you live that it's almost synonymous? Like the two, I don't think, if I'm in Garner, I'm sending you a text message. Like, I'm over by your way. I'm in Southeast Raleigh, I'm thinking about Pastor Chris and shit. Like, what made y'all say, even though this is not where I'm from, this is where I'm going to invest?
Man, I think for me, I mentioned this to you, I knew what made a difference in my life. And that it was so impacted by individuals that just said, I'm going to invest where I am. It's really just a part of, I guess, really of who I am. I mean, at the end of the day, but I know what brings me hope. I know what brings me purpose. And you get a little taste of that, though, and you're like, oh, okay.
I want some more of that.
That's what I was made for. That's what I was made for. The world doesn't have to be this way. And the truth is, it's a lot more fulfilling than just watching out for yourself. You know, when you have an opportunity to invest in other people. And so for me, it's just grow where you're planted. You know, if this is where God's placed me, then I'm going to invest where I am, and I'm going to see what doors open up.
Yes, sir.
And you turn around, and that's where you are.
And I think too, because we both are purpose-driven. Right. I don't just do something to be doing it. Right. I want to do something that makes a difference in somebody's life, and then it comes from, no matter where you are, where you're from, loving people. Right. If you love people and say you love people, then it'll show you want to do something with people. When you see hurting people, you don't want to see them hurting. Something in you says, what can I do about that? You don't just pass people by and don't see them. And I think that's a lot of what people do. You know, they'll pass people by and they're like, I don't see them, right? We don't do that. We're nobody special, but it's just, I just can't do that, right? If I see somebody and I see them, there's something missing in their lives, if I can do something about it, I want to. That's fulfilling a purpose, and the purpose is not always just in my life. It may be in somebody else's life, man. You know, I do something in your life that brings about change. You ain't got to say nothing else back to me, come to me and say, he did. No. It impacts your life that you're doing better. And I may not see you again until we get to glory, because that's the end of this, right? But I'm happy about it. Yeah.
What about how important has, as you guys have done this work, some of the challenges that you all face? Like, what are some of those, like, obstacles that you feel like, man, this made this a little bit harder than what it really needed to be?
Let me go first in this.
Go ahead, yeah, jump on it.
What makes it hard is me. Yeah, because sometimes, you know, you get wore out. You know, sometimes you get tired. And the truth of the matter is, we're human.
Right.
Sometimes you don't want to, right? So you might say, when you ask that question, you think people say money, this, that. No. I'll be honest. I put myself in a circle. Sometimes it's me. Sometimes I get in my own way. People say, well, Pastor Chris, you're always doing this. But Pastor Chris don't always want to do those things. That's the misconception.
You said that a minute ago. You said, well, what we do is this. Sometimes I'm in Target and I just pull my hat down.
You know, and sometimes
You said, I want to sleep in a couple of days, right?
Right. It's easy for me to say, you know, sometimes finance, we need people to do that, buildings. And I guess people know those things, right? That is a hard thing. So it is easy to do, but sometimes you got to get you out the way to do them. And I think that's what we need to say to people that we want them to impact in the area. You may be your biggest hurdle, right? Get out your own way, you know. And sometimes I do, as much as people say we do, you know, we don't, but we do. Sometimes we're getting our own way and we don't want to, but
Yeah, I would say, I'll go along the same lines, and I would say either a lack of self-belief, a lack that we actually can make a difference. You know, I mean, that we can get in this negative self-talk. Man, if somebody could do that, maybe I should. I could never really make that kind of impact instead of taking that first step. And sometimes we get in our own head or we get in our own feelings and think, well, I could never make that kind of impact. And so I'm going to land the same place. I think we've got to get past that and think, yeah, but what if I could? Right. And what would happen if I was the one that took the first step?
That's good.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hope in Real Life podcast. If this content was valuable for you, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. You never know how important it could be to bring a little hope into someone else's life. There's even a place here for you to comment. We would love to hear from you and hear your feedback. Until next time, let's keep sharing hope.